Today I'm returning to one of my very first adventures in the Las Vegas area. It's the Calico Basin, and we're looking at the Calico Hills. There are a couple adventures here. Well, let's take a look first of all. Great parking area, very popular destination. And if you just want to walk on a really nice boardwalk, there it is right below. I think it's around a mile all the way around. Great interpretive signs. It's Red Springs Desert Oasis. And as you look at the Calico Hills, notice that there is a kind of pathway that goes up. You wonder how to get to the top of the hills. Well, there's a little pathway. And it's called the Grand Staircase. I'm going to trace it all the way to the top. And we're going to take it in a moment. But get you all the way up. It's the easiest way to get up to the top of the Calico Hills. Now, the Calico Hills, they look pretty easy. However, some of these ledges are 50 feet or more. And so you can be wandering around among these rocks, and all of a sudden you're faced with a ledge 50 feet. You turn around and you forget the way you came up, and there's another 50-foot ledge. You can get trapped up in these seemingly easy, gentle rock hills. It's actually sandstone from the Jurassic era, and the reds are iron that's leached up from these old sandstone dunes. Anyway, you can get trapped up in these rocks. It's a condition that's called being cliffed out. You can't go up, you can't go down, and it can be pretty dangerous. There have been many rescues in this area, but there are pathways. We're going to take this Grand Staircase pathway. Why am I returning here? Because, as I said, this was one of my very first adventures, and I did not know a lot of the reference points around the Calico Hills, and so I think I misnamed some of them. Anyway, here's an easy one, very popular, Turtlehead Peak. But then you look behind Turtlehead Peak, you see those cliffs in the distance, and you're looking at La Madre Mountain on the right, El Padre Mountain on the left, and El Bastardo is a little further along. And you can find adventures on Las Vegas area trails that take you to the top of all those peaks. But let's look down below here. This is Craft Mountain. Lots of adventures in Craft Mountain, and there's a great circuit that goes all the way around Craft Mountain, 5-mile trail. Fantastic. And then look just above Craft Mountain, you're looking at Damsel Peak. And I've got adventures that take you to the summit of Damsel Peak. A lot of these adventures, there are no trails. So there you have it. Let's get started. And by the way, let's go ahead and let's trace, where do you start this grand staircase adventure? Well, you see the parking lot right below, and there's a little pathway. You're going to take this pathway and wind around, see where it winds around, and then it's going to land somewhere right up in this area. That's where you begin to climb. So, and then you go up the pathway that I mentioned, which is this diagonal path up to the summit. So let's go ahead and do that. And just to mention, it's pretty cold today. It's the day after Christmas. So we're starting out in about 40 degrees. Okay, here we go. And here we are starting up the pathway to the grand staircase. And this little pathway is going to lead us right up to the point where you leave the trail and begin heading up that diagonal grand staircase route that I showed you a moment ago. And just looking around where we are now. Beautiful southwestern desert scenery. Onward. As I mentioned, this route is very popular, and you can see where a group of hikers have left the upper end of the trail and are now beginning to ascend the grand staircase. And what they'll do is they'll circle around up to this point, catch that diagonal ascent, take you all the way to the summit. And by the way, if you feel that you might get lost without a trail, just know that this is so well traveled, it's a good place to practice seeing signs of people's passage on the rocks, where you can see little pathways that people have created over time, etched in the rock. Okay, here we are heading toward the beginning of that pathway. That group I showed you a moment ago, I've chosen another pathway, and that's fine. They've got some exploring and climbing to do up in this area. It works fine. But what I'm going to do is take a more gradual approach, because our target is the beginning of this diagonal route that takes you up to the top. So we're going to start more right in this area and then angle left. And the aim is to reach that diagonal pathway, then hug the cliff edge all the way up to the summit. And like I said, if you go another way, it's easy to get off route here. And if you take another pathway, that's fine, but you may risk getting hung up in some of these rocks, facing pretty substantial drop-offs everywhere around. And here we are leaving the path. There's where the path ends. And here's where the climb begins. As I said, we're gonna head up to, you see that diagonal pathway? That's where we're heading. And there are people climbing all over these rocks here. And I imagine if you've done this once and you want to keep returning and climb, you're going to find a whole lot of different variations on how to get to the top or just enjoy being on the rock. Okay, we're heading up over this and then again over to that area right there where the diagonal grand staircase begins. Okay, at the base of these rocks, we're going to do a shoe change. I'm changing from my trail running shoes to rock climbing shoes that I haven't tested yet. It's a great place to test these shoes. These shoes kind of give you the experience of being Spider-Man. They really grip the rock, and you can climb up inclines on these rocks without slipping, that with trail running shoes or other kinds of shoes you might slip. And here's a couple hikers taking the exact route that I've mentioned. See if I can find them. Yes, there they are. So they're heading toward this diagonal approach. So you can see them down there where they start up the grand staircase. Takes you right to the top. Okay, now we have left all marked trails, and as I mentioned, you look for little signs of prior human passage. This is actually good wilderness navigation experience where you've left the trails and there are little routes all over the place in the mountains. And if you go by the logical route, which is, as I mentioned, this diagonal approach, you will find yourself seeing signs of prior passage all over the place. And then everything will disappear and then reappear again and again. But yeah, this is an excellent place to test your rock climbing shoes, build rock climbing skills, and grow your navigational awareness and skill. There's a reason they call this the grand staircase, and that's because if you look carefully, you can see where the stairs are, and it's actually very easy as long as you stay on the basic stairway. Now, having said that, watch me stray off the stairway and end up facing a huge drop-off. But anyway, I start out with all confidence, and you can see there is that diagonal stairway, and the stairs are going to continue all the way up to the summit. And here you could just take this right up to the beginning of that stairway, which is exactly what we're going to do. And here's another valuable part of my rock climbing equipment is these knee pads, knee braces. They do two things. One is if you need to kneel on a rock surface to raise yourself to the next level, you're not going to hurt your knees. Secondly, they just give you added stability on the way up. So let's put them on and continue on up. And by the way, that parking lot below really fills up quickly. We'll take a look at it on the way down, but it's entirely full by probably around 10 o'clock. And then there are cars parked along the road, both directions, because they can't get into the parking lot. And here is that walkway I was talking about a moment ago. Here's a better view of it. As I mentioned, interpretive signs along the way. For example, if you've looked at the red rocks like this one up ahead, and you're wondering, what are these little nodules on the rocks? Well, there's an interpretive sign along the pathway that will tell you how these nodules were formed and what they are, and how these rocks were formed. So you might actually want to take a walk on this interpretive pathway, Red Springs Desert Oasis. Desert Oasis. It's um, continually fed by a spring throughout the heat of the summer. And so the grasses and the brush remain replenished. And it's a very beautiful little walkway. But anyway, yeah, there you have it. Knee braces. And we're going to need them as we head over this next section, which requires, for me, putting your knees on the rock and lifting your way up. And um, then we hug that cliff wall all the way up to the summit. So onward up the grand staircase. And as I mentioned, as you ascend, you can find signs of human passage along the logical route. You can see that it's headed up toward those rocks and just hugging the right side of that cliff on the left. So continuing on upward, and by the way, yeah, you can see people have walked in this area because rocks and sand do not end up naturally in that kind of configuration. And then you can see the staircase beginning to ascend, or continuing to ascend. And now here we are hugging the right side of this cliff on the left. And you see now it's beginning to look like a really broken up stairway, but there are stairs and you can actually continue walking up to the summit here. And then just to get a quick view what's around us. And then straight ahead there is the Red Rock Casino and Las Vegas Valley behind. And there is the double humped Frenchman Mountain. Like I said, on my first trip in this area, I could not identify a lot of these reference points. And there is the edge of Damsel Peak, and you can see the pinnacle on the right and the southern summit on the left, and then it goes around to a northern summit. And you can look up Damsel Peak on LasVegasAreaTrails.com, see how to get to all those locations. But for now, let's continue on up the grand staircase. And here's another important thing to note, that as you're ascending, be looking backward a whole lot. look all around you to find all those ways that will lead you to a cliff drop-off. And you know you're going to continue up this narrow little passageway just to the right of these cliffs. You can see how the stairway continues. So be aware of that when you get to the top and you leave this cliff guidance system. Beware of where to pick it up again, because wow, you can get off course and then you go in any of these other directions and you're facing drop-offs, and it's pretty easy to get to a point where you're cliffed out, where you look at a drop-off ahead and you've wandered around these rocks and you try to get back to the pathway and there are cliffs all around. So yeah, look at the big picture here and look around in front and behind so you become very familiar with the pathway. You'll need to know that on the way down. Another look at the stairway. We've rounded another corner. You can see the stairway ascending right along the right side of these cliffs. And by the way, this is what I meant by a drop-off that looks very small from a distance, but wow, look at this drop-off. Imagine straying to the top of that and trying to find your way down. And the stairway continues upward. Kind of a diabolical stairway. You can tell I'm not a rock climber. I'm a distance runner. But wow, it is a stairway if you can only find the steps. Now let's take a look down. And here you can see the cliff we have been hugging on the way up. And the parking area and the boardwalk below. And then, of course, here's the emerging view of the Las Vegas Valley. And now you can see a portion of the strip. See the little residential area in Calico Basin. And there's the eastern side of, or tip of Craft Mountain, southeastern tip. We'll see a whole lot more as we continue to ascend. So up we go, up this stairway. Quick word of caution: do not attempt this within a few days of the last rain, and definitely not during a rain, because when these rocks are wet, it becomes a real skating rink and there's no traction. And there you can see downward. Once again, the edge of this cliff is your guide both up and back down. There aren't many other easy ways, if any, to get to the top of the grand staircase than hugging this cliff that'll take you all the way up to the summit of the Calico Hills. As I mentioned, this stairway will leave the edge of the cliff line as you ascend further. Very important to note where you again resume that cliff line. And you can see it right here. There's the cliff line. And so you'll be you'll be tempted to head straight down. I wouldn't do it unless you're really experienced on these rocks because a lot of drop-offs, huge drop-offs. Or to think you're on the cliff line up there and look at the drop-offs you'd be facing. It's near impossible. So yeah, note this spot. This is where you begin to leave the cliff line. Things begin to, the incline begins to level out just a little bit as you continue upward. And there again is the point where you want to regain that cliff line on the way down on the return trip. Do not stray off to your left, or you could end up cliffed out. So yeah, and notice the network of trails below. That's one neat thing about Calico Basin, is there's a network of trails that will take you throughout the basin. And if you're a runner or you're using this for a distance walking workout, Calico Basin is one of your best places to do this, in addition to Blue Diamond Hill. Okay, let's continue on up now. Things leveling off a little bit. Looking good. Up here, there are many ways to get to the summit, at least 2 or 3, but there's only one way down if you want to take the staircase. And it's right along these cliffs, so get a good focus on what these cliffs are going to look like, because that's your way down. You're going to be hugging the left edge of the cliffs on the way down. It's pretty cool how things open up as you ascend. There's the boardwalk below, parking area. You can see it filling up. And then looking over to the Las Vegas Valley, now you can see more of the Las Vegas Valley. And you can see the strip over here. The lighting isn't really good, but it's there. And you can see Frenchman Mountain. And then to the left of Frenchman Mountain, the Muddy Mountains. There's the one way down. And coming around this corner, we're now taking one of multiple ways upward. And it all leads to the summit. When we get up there, we'll be sitting on that rock up above. In the background. Let's continue on up. Okay, sticking to the most gradual pathway up, I rounded these rocks. And now I took a U-turn and I'm heading up in this direction, which I know puts us toward the summit, hopefully on the summit. We'll find out. But in the meantime, look around. A lot more opening up. There's White Rock Mountain in Red Rock Canyon along Scenic Drive, High Point. And now we can see La Madre Mountain. El Padre Mountain to the left. And then a little further on, El Bastardo. These are on the La Madre Mountains ridgeline, the La Madre Mountains wilderness. There's some more Calico Hills, and we'll be finding a route over and through these hills into Red Rock Canyon in a bit. We'll see how that works out. But in the meantime, yeah, more of the trail system in the Calico Basin. And there we're looking up that opening between Craft Mountain on the right, and I don't know if it's got a name on the left, but that opening is called Pink Goblin Pass. And that's part of the Craft Mountain Loop, which is an awesome loop. You find that on Las Vegas area trails. And now we can see in the distance Summerlin Ridge emerging. And even the tip of Gas Peak. So that's pretty cool. And then you can see the Las Vegas Valley below. And all the way over to the Strip, faintly in the distance. Bad lighting, not the best time of day to be viewing in that direction. And it's a bit of a hazy day. But yes, we are continuing to close in on the summit of these Calico Hills, taking this U-turn here and continuing toward the summit. We'll see if we pick the right path. And these visitors are trying to tell me that the staircase was really easy. They climbed it a lot faster than I did. So, thanks. Okay, now we're rounding these high points. Gonna go around the back side of the high points and then find a way up. And once we do that, we will be on the summit. We just came through this area right here. By the way, here's another reference point. Turtlehead Peak. Okay, here we are on the summit. And let's just take a panorama, look around. Damsel Peak, you can see more of it. And you can see the southern pinnacle on the right, and then the southern summit. And then there's a saddle to the northern summit. Like I mentioned, all that on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. And then here's the La Madre Mountains ridgeline. And then tucked away, seemingly camouflaged, the base of La Madre Mountains ridgeline is Turtlehead Peak. And I can't see it with the glare on the camera, but yeah, it's there. And you can probably see it better than I can. Then we circle around, and now you're looking down at Red Rock Canyon. But before we look down into Red Rock Canyon and the scenic drive area, let's look at the Rainbow Mountains. Rainbow Mountains Wilderness, awesome wilderness area. And let's get a big view of it. There you go. And you can actually take the Rainbow Mountains ridge line. It's an upper crest ridge line that's behind the Rainbow Mountains. It's not sandstone, so it's this ridge line. You can take it all the way from Mountain Spring to White Rock Mountain. So let's see, Mountain Springs, let's take it a little more slowly. Mountain Springs is at the base of Potosi Mountain, which is right in the center there. And you catch, at the Mountain Springs trailhead, you catch the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline, and you can take it all the way along. And let's identify a few of the Rainbow Mountains. It's not entirely easy. I think that, oh, this is interesting. What we're looking at right in the center there is a beautiful place called Little Zion. It's like a little version of Zion National Park. Let's zoom in even further if we can. Yeah, look at that. And just to the left of Little Zion would be Hidden Peak, and then continuing south on the Rainbow Mountains ridgeline, the next peaks would be Black Velvet Peak. You can't see them very clearly right now, but you've got Black Velvet Peak, Windy Peak, Hollow Rock Peak, and South Peak. The peaks on the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline. And then here is Indecision Peak, continuing north to the right of Little Zion. And then the tallest Rainbow Mountain, you can see it from all over Las Vegas, known for its square top, is Mount Wilson. And then continuing along, here's Rainbow Mountain, and that cliff on the right side of that peak is Rainbow Wall, sheer cliff, amazing. And then there's Juniper Peak. And Mescalito Pyramid. And then we come over to Bridge Mountain. And over here, Buffalo Wall. And this, by the way, is why I returned to this area, because I didn't know all these landmarks last time I was here a number of years ago. And then here's White Rock Mountain. And then above is the La Madre Mountains ridgeline. And on the other side of the Rainbow Mountains is Lovell Canyon. And if you're going to summit these sandstone peaks in the Rainbow Mountains, one way is to experience a whole lot of vertical rock climbing, or near vertical rock climbing, from the Red Rock Canyon side, this side. Another is to go over to Lovell Canyon on the other side of the Rainbow Mountains and take the back entrance, get up to the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline, and then descend to these peaks. A lot easier. Now, let's take a look. I'm thinking that right in the center here would be North Peak. That's on the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline. And either it's that or, yeah, less likely that it's this. Now, I'm going to vote for that first one that I showed you a moment ago. Anyway, you can see a lot of adventures on LasVegasAreaTrails.com where I ascend above the Rainbow Mountains on that Upper Crest Ridgeline. And then continuing, look at these formations. Pretty awesome. And there's the Red Rock Canyon visitor area, visitor center. And over here is Blue Diamond Hill, which is another awesome place for workouts. And I've got some videos and maps of the various trails on Blue Diamond Hill. It's almost like each one is like its own little ski run. And they have different names. And they're used for horseback riding, for mountain bikes, and for running and hiking. And there's actually up in this canyon, which is Cowboy Canyon, there's a pretty famous cave. And we'll be looking at that soon. So Blue Diamond Hill. And then back to the Calico Basin, which is the other fantastic area to have a daily workout on this network of trails. Pick your trail. There's a lot of variety, and just enjoy Calico Basin. So there you have it. And we'll end with a look at the Las Vegas Strip on the right and looking straight at Frenchman Mountain behind the Red Rock Casino and the Muddy Mountains to the left, and then you continue way onward and you're going to end in the Valley of Fire area beyond these hills and to the left. So there you have it. Beautiful perspective here. And by the way, I mentioned we'd look down into Red Rock Canyon, and you can see below there are something like 13 different scenic drive pullouts. And here's number one. It's where a lot of people come to look at the Calico Hills from the Red Rock Canyon side. You see a line of people exploring the Calico Hills. from the Red Rock Scenic Drive. And let's see if we can see some of the other pullouts. So that's where people come just to take a look at the Calico Hills, play around. Now here's a more serious pullout, which is number 2. It's for climbers, rock climbers, much more serious than myself, and they climb these red rocks, a lot of um, vertical shelves there, and you could park anywhere along the base of Calico Hills, along the Red Rock Scenic Drive in one of the pullouts, and just get your binoculars out, watch the rock climbers. Pretty fascinating. And of course, White Rock Mountain. That's another mountain that has a great loop around the mountain. Great for workouts. And you can see over here, there's the high point in the Scenic Drive, and it's a place where you can park and just walk out of your car and see down the whole length of Red Rock Canyon. Pretty cool. Then over in this area, Willow Spring, there's a couple picnic areas there. And then Lost Creek Canyon. And that's another really cool thing about the Rainbow Mountains. There are a number of canyons along the base of the Rainbow Mountains. Here is Icebox Canyon. You can head up the trails in these canyons. You do a lot of climbing, scrambling over rocks, but you can see some waterfalls, mostly in the spring, I would say. And there's Pine Creek Canyon. Beautiful, beautiful canyon. I pointed out Mescalito Pyramid, which is that pyramid structure there in the center of Pine Creek Canyon. And then over this direction, between Rainbow Mountain and Mount Wilson, is Oak Creek Canyon. Then just to the left of Mount Wilson, that square top mountain, and between Mount Wilson and Indecision Peak is First Creek Canyon. So yeah, canyons can be pretty cool, except, you know, prepare to experience rocks and ledges, boulders, and a lot of brush. It gets very thick in those canyons. And by the way, I failed to mention a couple of very cool trails in Red Rock Canyon. And one is what's called the Grand Circle, which is a trail that'll take you all the way around both sides of Red Rock Canyon, and you can find the entrance right at the visitor center. And another trail is what I call the series of trails, the Rainbow Mountains Baseline, Eastern Baseline trails that go along the base of the Rainbow Mountains. And there are trails like, you know, from the top down. I don't know if I can name them all right now. You can find them in Las Vegas area trails, but there is the SMYC trail, and yeah, I forget all the names of the various trails. So yeah, look them up on LasVegasAreaTrails.com, and you can see videos where we traversed those trails all the way from the southern side of the Rainbow Mountains at the base of Mount Wilson all the way up to White Rock Mountain and the Willow Spring area. And here's a look at the parking lot at about 1 o'clock. Not a spot left.